The first time Eli stayed over was the night everything changed. I didn't expect him to crash at my place after the party, and I definitely didn't expect to wake up at 2 a.m. to find him slipping into my bed like it was the most normal thing in the world. But maybe I should have seen it coming. We weren't strangers. Eli and I had been in the same friend group since sophomore year, and by the time we hit senior fall, we'd gotten close in that way people do when they share too many late nights, too many secrets, and a little too much unspoken tension. He was funny, effortlessly hot, with messy brown curls and that obnoxiously confident smile that made girls, and guys, let's be real, gravitate toward him. The thing is, Eli wasn't gay, at least not officially. He dated girls, flirted shamelessly with them, had a thing for blondes in sundresses, and I had a very strict rule about not falling for the unavailable ones. But it was hard not to wonder sometimes. Like the way he'd lean in too close when he talked, or how his hand would linger on my back when we were laughing at something stupid. Little things, easy to dismiss, unless you didn't want to. Anyway, the night of the party, we all ended up at this off-campus house that belonged to someone's older brother. It was one of those overcrowded, sticky floor situations, the kind of party where the music's always too loud and everyone's pretending not to care who's watching. I didn't want to go at first, but Eli had texted me earlier that day, "Don't flake, dude. You owe me a beer." So I went. We stuck together most of the night. He kept refilling my cup and making dumb jokes, and every now and then our arms would brush, or he'd shout something in my ear and lean way too close for comfort. Or maybe just close enough. At around 1 a.m., things started winding down. People were filtering out, a few couples already sneaking off to do some moves in cars or bathrooms. I was sobering up, mentally preparing to call an Uber, when Eli turned to me and said, "You heading back to your place?" "Yeah, I'm done," I said, stretching my arms. "This party peaked 2 hours ago." He nodded, then tilted his head a little. "Mind if I crash at yours? I'm way too lazy to walk back to my dorm." It wasn't that far. His dorm was maybe a 10-minute walk from the party, 15 if he was drunk stumbling. But I didn't question it. "Yeah," I said, trying to play it cool. "Sure." We got back to my place, a tiny second-floor apartment I shared with one of Eli's teammates, who was thankfully out of town for the weekend. I tossed him a blanket and pointed to the couch. "You good?" "Yeah, man. Thanks," he said, already kicking off his sneakers. I went to my room, closed the door, and climbed into bed. My head was spinning, not from alcohol, but from Eli, his voice still in my ears, that stupid half-smile he always wore when he was hiding something. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like forever. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, the door creaked open. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. Then the mattress shifted. I turned my head, heart racing. It was Eli. He didn't say anything, just slid under the covers beside me like he'd done it 100 times before. I blinked at him in the dark. "What are you doing?" His voice was quiet, almost sheepish. "The couch sucks." I could have made a joke, could have told him to suck it up, or thrown him a pillow. But I didn't. I just laid there, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Is this okay?" he asked. I nodded, barely audible. "Yeah." He settled in, pulling the blanket over both of us. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the street lamp outside. For a long moment, we didn't move. I was hyper-aware of every breath, every shift in the sheets, every inch of space or lack of it between us. Then he whispered, "I couldn't sleep." I turned slightly. "You didn't even try." He gave a soft laugh, the kind that sent warmth down my spine. Maybe I didn't want to, and that's when it hit me. He wasn't here by accident. He wasn't just avoiding a crappy couch. He'd come into my room for a reason. There was a kind of silence in the room that made everything louder. The air felt thicker somehow, like even the heat from his body next to mine was amplified. I could hear his breathing. Steady, careful, not like someone asleep, like someone waiting. I shifted slightly onto my side, facing him. In the dim light, I could make out the shape of his face. His eyes were open. He was already looking at me. "Eli," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared for a second, his expression unreadable. Then he exhaled softly and said, "I don't know." My heart was thudding, like it wanted out of my chest. I wasn't sure if I should pull back, laugh it off, or let it happen. Whatever it was. "You're drunk," I said, more to fill the space than anything. "Not really," he replied. "I mean, I was. Not now." His hand moved under the blanket. Just a small shift. It landed lightly on the space between us, fingers grazing mine. Just barely. I didn't pull away. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I nodded. "Have you ever wondered about us?" I stared at him, and I could feel my brain trying to keep up. I'd asked myself that question too many times to count. Usually at night, usually alone. And every time, I told myself it was stupid. That Eli wasn't into guys. That even if he was curious, it didn't mean anything. But hearing it from him, now here, in my bed, made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. "Yeah," I said finally. "I've wondered." He let out a breath like he'd been holding it. "I think about it sometimes," he said, "when I shouldn't." My fingers twitched under the blanket, brushing against his. It felt electric. "You're not messing with me, right?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, I wouldn't do that to you." I believed him. He rolled onto his side, mirroring me. We were close enough now that I could see the way his throat moved when he swallowed. Close enough to feel his breath. "I don't know what this means," he said. "I don't even know what I want. I didn't want to go home tonight." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was screaming to be careful, that this might be a mistake, that it could ruin everything. But another part, the louder part, wanted to stay right here, frozen in this strange, quiet moment. Eli reached up, his hand brushing against my cheek in a way that felt too intimate to be an accident. "Is this okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." Then he leaned in. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. Just the suggestion of one. His forehead rested against mine, and we both stayed there, unmoving, like the world outside had stopped turning. I don't know how long we laid like that. 5 minutes? An hour? It could have been forever, and I wouldn't have noticed. Eventually, his hand slid down from my face and rested on my chest, warm through the fabric of my shirt. His eyes closed. "I just want to stay here," he murmured. "You can." And we didn't say anything else. Not that night. He fell asleep like that. Close, quiet, touching but not crossing the line. And I stayed wide awake, heart still pounding, replaying every second in my head. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. If he'd remember this, or regret it, or pretend it never happened. But at 2 a.m. in the dark, with his hand resting gently on me like he'd done it 1,000 times before, I let myself hope. The next morning, I woke up before him. For a second, I forgot where I was. The room was washed in soft light, and everything looked normal. The desk with my laptop still open, the hoodie slung over my chair, the half-full glass of water on my nightstand. But then, I turned slightly and saw him. Eli, still asleep, still in my bed. His arm was draped across my waist like it had always been there. His face was turned toward me, lips slightly parted, hair a mess of soft curls on the pillow. And I didn't move. I barely breathed. I just stared, my brain slowly catching up with the fact that this wasn't a dream. This had happened. At some point during the night, we must have shifted, because we were a lot closer than I remembered. His leg was tangled with mine under the blanket, and our bodies were pressed together in a way that felt intimate and heavy with implication. I should have felt nervous, or panicked, or at the very least, confused. but I didn't. I felt calm until he stirred. His eyes opened slowly, squinting against the light. He looked at me, really looked, and I saw it. That split-second flicker of panic, the "what did I do" expression people wear when they realize something happened they hadn't planned on. He pulled back slightly, not all the way, but enough to make the space between us feel suddenly cold. "Shit," he muttered, running a hand over his face. I sat up, unsure whether to give him space or ask him to talk to me. "Hey." He looked over, eyes wide, like he wasn't sure how to handle this moment. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to. I didn't plan." "You don't have to apologize." He blinked. "I crashed your bed. And I let you." He stared at me, breathing a little unsteady. "Did I do anything weird?" I hesitated. "No, you were just here." A pause. He nodded slowly, like he wanted to believe me. "Okay, that's good." He sat up, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed, rubbing the back of his neck. His shirt had ridden up slightly, revealing the curve of his lower back, and for a moment, I hated how badly I still wanted him, even in this awkward morning after fog. "I should probably head out," he mumbled, standing. I watched him gather his phone and hoodie, avoiding my gaze. It felt like the night had been packed into a bottle and thrown into the ocean, like he'd already decided to forget. "You don't have to make this weird," I said finally. He stopped, his back to me. "I'm not," he said. I don't know what to say." "Try the truth." He turned, slowly. His eyes searched mine. "I don't know what last night meant. I don't even know what I was doing. I felt like I needed to be near you. I still feel that." The words landed between us like something fragile and important. Neither of us moved. "I'm not trying to trap you in anything," I said. "You don't owe me some big explanation." Eli exhaled, eyes dropping to the floor. "I know. I didn't think I was the kind of guy who could feel this way about another guy." "And now?" He looked up. "Now I'm not so sure." We stood in silence, both of us stuck somewhere between honesty and hesitation. Finally, Eli stepped toward me. "I'm not ready for this," he said. "But I'm also not ready to walk away." My chest tightened. "Then don't." He nodded, eyes lingering on mine for a moment longer before he slipped out the door, pulling it closed behind him with a soft click. I sat back on the bed, heart thudding. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. For the rest of the weekend, Eli didn't text. Not a single meme, not a "yo, what's up," not even one of those random voice notes he always sent when something ridiculous happened. It was like he'd hit pause on whatever this was. Or maybe just on me. By Sunday night, I was pacing in my room like an idiot, pretending I wasn't refreshing our messages every 10 minutes. I knew better than to push him, but the silence was brutal. I kept replaying everything he'd said. "I felt like I needed to be near you. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to walk away." What did that even mean? Then around 11 p.m., just as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a knock at the front door. Not a text, not a call, a knock. I opened it to find Eli standing there, hands in the pockets of his hoodie, hair damp from the rain. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, like he'd been thinking just as hard as I had. "Hey," he said. "Hey." "I didn't want to text," he said. "I didn't know what to say without seeing your face." I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked past me, his sneakers squeaking slightly on the floor. He didn't go far. Just stood near the couch like he wasn't sure whether to sit down or pace around until he passed out. "I've been thinking," he started, eyes on the floor, "about that night. About you." I sat on the edge of the armrest, waiting. "I haven't stopped thinking about it," he continued. "And not just because it was confusing or unexpected or whatever. It's more than that." I swallowed. "Okay." He finally looked up. "I think part of me always knew." Knew what? That I liked you. The words hit like a punch to the chest, not because they were painful, but because they'd been buried so long. I'd stopped believing I'd ever hear them. "I didn't know how to deal with it," he said, so I ignored it. I made jokes. I flirted without meaning to. I stayed in the friend zone because it felt safe. I nodded slowly. And now? He let out a shaky breath. Now I don't want to pretend anymore. I stood up, not because I was mad, but because I couldn't sit still with my heart thudding that loud in my chest. So what are you saying? I asked. I'm saying, he stepped closer, that I'm scared, but I don't want to keep being scared if it means losing whatever this is between us. I could feel him in front of me now, just inches away, the space between us crackling with everything unspoken. I searched his face, looking for doubt, but all I saw was hope, and maybe a little fear. I reached out and touched his wrist. You're not losing me? I said. Eli exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for days. Good, he whispered, and then, finally, he leaned in. This time, it wasn't tentative. It wasn't a maybe. It was real. His lips met mine like he'd been waiting for the permission, like something had finally clicked. The kiss was slow at first, a question, but it deepened quickly, both of us leaning into it like we'd both been starved for this. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I should have done that a long time ago, he said. Yeah, I breathed, but I'm glad you waited until it meant something. He smiled softly. It means everything. And somehow, in that quiet moment, soaked in leftover rain and months of denial, everything finally made sense. After that night, things didn't exactly go back to normal, but they didn't fall apart either. We didn't make a big announcement. No deep Instagram captions or "we need to talk" group messages. It was just us, figuring it out in the quiet space between classes, coffee runs, and late night hangouts. In public, nothing changed. Eli was still Eli, loud, sarcastic, charming in that effortless way that made everyone love him. And I was still me, mostly keeping to myself, pretending I wasn't hyper aware of the way his knee would brush mine under the library table, or how his eyes lingered a little too long when I wasn't looking. But in private, everything was different. He started staying over more, and not just when he needed a place to crash. Sometimes we'd watch movies in my room, and he'd fall asleep with his head on my shoulder. Other nights he'd show up with snacks and that crooked grin, saying, "Your bed's more comfortable than mine." He never said the word boyfriend, neither did I. But there was a closeness now, a rhythm. One night, a couple weeks later, we were sitting on my floor eating leftover pizza, half watching a dumb horror movie when Eli said, "Do you ever think about how weird this is?" I looked at him, confused. Weird how? Us, he said, waving a hand between us. Like, if you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting on your floor thinking about how much I like a guy, I wouldn't have believed it. Do you regret it? I asked, half joking, but not really. He paused, then shook his head. Not even a little. Then he leaned in and kissed me, slow and familiar, like it wasn't something we had to think about anymore. Just something that happened, naturally, like gravity. After a second, he pulled back and smiled. I like this, he said quietly. I did too. More than I knew how to explain. But even as things felt good, really good, there was this small, quiet part of me that kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Eli to wake up one day and realize he couldn't do this. That it was just a phase or something he needed to try before going back to whatever normal meant for him. That fear was hard to shake. And it crept in on a night. I least expected it. We were walking back from a party. A different one this time, smaller, more chill. Eli had introduced me to a couple people as his favorite person, and while that made me smile, I still noticed the way he avoided labels. The way his friends teased him about girls and he didn't correct them. It wasn't anything he said, it was what he didn't. When we got back to my place, he dropped onto my bed like he always did, pulling off his hoodie and tossing it aside. Cold out, he said, stretching. I nodded. You were quiet on the walk back. He looked over, surprised. Was I? Yeah. He ran a hand through his hair, then leaned back on his elbows. Just thinking. I waited. He didn't elaborate. I sat down next to him, trying to read his expression. You okay? Eli looked at me for a long second before answering. Sometimes I get scared that I'm gonna mess this up. I blinked. Why would you think that? Because I'm not used to this, he said. I've never done this before, and I don't want to hurt you just because I'm figuring things out late. My chest tightened. You're not hurting me, I said. You're here. That's what matters. He sat up, suddenly serious. But what if I freak out one day? What if I say something dumb or pull away because I don't know how to deal with what people think? I took his hand. Then we'd deal with it. Together. He looked down at our hands, fingers intertwined. I just don't want to be the guy who leads you on, he said quietly. You're not, I said. But if that ever changes, just be honest. That's all I want from you. He nodded slowly. Okay. And in that moment, I think we both realized what we were building. Not just something impulsive or temporary, but something real. Fragile maybe, but real. That night, when he curled up next to me and fell asleep with his face tucked into my neck, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Fall slid into winter faster than I expected. The air turned crisp, leaves crunched underfoot, and suddenly everything on campus smelled like coffee and stress. Finals were creeping up, people were pairing off for cuffing season, and the whole world felt like it was slowing down, except for whatever was happening between Eli and me. We still didn't talk about it. Not directly, anyway. Not with real words like boyfriend or relationship or coming out. But we acted like we were in something. And maybe that was enough. At least for a while. Eli kept staying over. Some nights we'd talk until 3 a.m. about dumb things. Movies we hated, places we wanted to visit, what we'd do if we dropped out and opened a food truck together. Other nights we didn't talk at all. We just held each other, close and quiet, like the silence was enough. But then the gap started showing. It started small. We'd be walking through the quad, and I'd go to brush his arm, but he'd shift away like someone might see. Or a mutual friend would mention a girl who liked him, and he'd just laugh, play along, never once correcting the assumption. I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself he needed time, that he wasn't like me. Out, comfortable, used to the sideways glances and the way people whisper when they think you're not listening. He hadn't had the same years of practice. But still, one night we were in my room, scrolling through a movie we'd probably fall asleep halfway through. I was leaned up against him, head resting on his shoulder. It was late, we were both half awake, and I don't even know why I said it. I like this, I whispered. He turned slightly, eyes meeting mine. Yeah? Yeah, I said. I like you. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Eli's smile faltered just slightly, enough for me to feel it, like a draft under the door. He kissed me softly, like that would be the answer. But I felt it in my chest, the space between us widening, even when our bodies were close. A few days later it happened. We were at another party, low-key, mostly people from our department. I was talking to someone near the kitchen, and when I turned, I saw Eli across the room, a girl laughing at something he'd said, her hand lingering on his arm. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't mine. Not officially. But it still hurt. I left early. Didn't even say goodbye. He texted me an hour later. You good? I stared at it for 5 full minutes before replying. Just tired. Went home. He didn't reply. The next day, he didn't come by. Or the day after that. And for the first time in weeks, I went to bed alone. No second body beside me. No soft breathing in the dark. No hand reaching out under the covers, just to make sure I was still there. By the 3rd day, I told myself I was overreacting. So I texted him. Want to come over tonight? He left me on read. 3 days turned into 4. Then 5. I kept checking my phone like an idiot. Every time it buzzed, I hoped it was him. Every time it wasn't, I told myself it didn't matter. It did. By the end of the week, I stopped pretending I was fine. I was walking around campus with a hollow feeling in my chest, that kind of heavy silence that fills the space when someone's presence disappears from your life without warning. And the worst part? Nobody else even noticed. Because to everyone else, nothing had changed. It wasn't like we were together. There was no official title, no public display. So when he stopped coming around, there weren't any questions. No whispers, no concerned looks. Just me. Alone. And quietly falling apart. I didn't see him again until the following Friday. It was cold. First real frost of the season. I was heading back to my apartment from the library, hoodie up, headphones in, just trying to make it through the day. And then there he was, sitting on the steps outside my building, hunched over in that worn-out denim jacket he always wore, hands in his sleeves, staring at the sidewalk like it might tell him what to do. He looked up when he saw me. No smile, just guilt. And something else. Something tired. I stopped a few feet away, pulling out one earbud. "You ghosted me," I said, more calmly than I felt. He nodded slowly. "I know." "Why?" He looked down, shaking his head. "Because I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, and I didn't want to tell the truth either." I crossed my arms, heart pounding. "Which truth?" "That I'm scared," he said. "That I like you, and it's real, and it's not going away, and that it terrifies me." I didn't move. I didn't say anything. He looked up again, eyes glassy. I didn't know how to be the guy who liked another guy. I still don't. I exhaled, my voice quieter now. "You don't have to have it all figured out, Eli. But you don't get to disappear on me either." "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. I panicked. I thought maybe if I stepped back, the feelings would fade, or make sense, or something. And did they?" "No," he said. "They got louder." I let the silence stretch between us for a second. Then, "So why are you here now?" He stood up slowly, stepping closer. "Because I missed you. Because every night I didn't sleep next to you, I kept waking up and reaching for someone who wasn't there." My throat tightened. "I didn't come to make promises I can't keep," he continued. "But I came to tell you that I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." I stared at him, unsure whether to scream or kiss him. So I did neither. Instead, I stepped forward, close enough to feel the warmth of his body against mine, even in the freezing air, and I said, "If you're gonna do this, Eli, really do it. No more hiding, no more disappearing." He nodded. "I'm trying. I swear I'm trying." Then, softly, "Can I come inside?" I didn't say yes. I just took his hand and led him upstairs. Inside, everything felt different, but not unfamiliar. He dropped his jacket by the door like he always used to, but this time, he didn't pretend things were normal. He stood there, waiting, eyes scanning my face like he was still afraid I might ask him to leave. I didn't. I went to the kitchen, poured him a glass of water without asking, handed it to him like a peace offering. He took it, and we sat, not side by side like we usually did, but across from each other, facing it all head on for once. Eli looked down at the rim of his glass. "So what happens now?" I leaned back in my chair. "That depends on you." "I don't want to be part-time," he said. "I don't want to be someone who sneaks into your bed at 2 a.m. and disappears when it gets real." "Then don't be." He looked up, a small, hesitant smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I want this. You. Us. I need to take it slow." I nodded. "I'm not asking you to change overnight. I just need you to be honest with me. No more disappearing acts." "Deal?" he said. Then after a beat, "Can I stay tonight? You never have to ask." Later, we ended up on my bed. Not in that rushed, adrenaline-heavy way we did before, but slowly, carefully, like two people choosing to show up for each other, again and again. He lay on his side, facing me, one hand curled between us. "You remember that party?" he asked, voice low. "The night I first stayed over? Kind of hard to forget," I said with a small smile. He laughed softly. "I wasn't even that drunk. I just wanted to be near you." "You said that," I reminded him. "Yeah," he said, brushing his fingers lightly against mine. "But I didn't know why then. I didn't know it was this." I turned to face him fully. "And now?" He reached up and touched the side of my face, thumb grazing my cheek. Now it's the only thing that feels real. We didn't kiss right away. We just laid there, forehead to forehead, breathing in sync, no pressure to be anything other than what we were in that moment. Two guys who figured out, in the quiet space between confusion and clarity, that they didn't want to wake up without each other again. Eventually, his hand found mine under the blanket. "You ever think about how weird it is that all this started with one party?" he whispered. I grinned. You climbing into my bed at 2 a.m. was definitely not on my bingo card for that night. "Best mistake I ever made," he said. And I believed him. Because the warmth, the closeness, the quiet certainty of being wanted, this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the beginning of something real.